Hello, everyone. I come ready to talk about a topic that I learned from my dad. He would always say this quote or this phrase. I don't really know where he got it from, but he would say something like this. Well, Harley, whether it's a good situation or a bad situation, the soul always learns. And I thought about that quite a lot, and it kind of helped me realize that yeah, when I'm having a rough time, when I'm having a rough day, when I'm having a rough year, when things aren't going my way, when people that I love are dying, when bad news is all over the news, etc., there's always something that you can learn from those bad situations. And and it's kind of cheap to say to someone that's going through a terrible time, "Oh, it's okay. You're going to learn something afterwards." So I'm not trying to sound like disingenuous and just tell the people, oh, if they're suffering, oh, it's okay because they're going to learn anyways from it and it's going to be positive in the end. I don't think that's useful to say to someone in suffering, but it's just an interesting fact. I've heard people say, like older people say, that they wouldn't ever trade their bad experiences that they've had, their painful experiences, even though in the moment they probably would have wanted to trade it for something else. Afterwards, once they got through it and thought about it and characterized what actually, what's the right word here, compartmentalized what actually occurred, they then see the lessons they learned, they see the person they became through it, and they wouldn't ever want to trade that experience for anyone else. And so that's interesting. And one thing that really helped me also was the idea that a fundamental idea that life is suffering. It's a Buddhist idea, it's also a Christian idea, it's just a psychological idea, meaning that there's always going to be things that are painful. There's always going to be events that come up that truly test you, and you might not even want to be alive during some of those moments. But normally, you can get through and learn from those situations. And one thing that I also learned was that even though life is fundamentally suffering and the precondition for life is suffering, and that no matter who you are, you're going to suffer, there's still an optimistic side because when you act in ways that are truthful and towards the good, you actually make that suffering worthwhile and you actually make the world a better place, even though the world is full of pain. So you're standing up. So when one stands up to the suffering of the world, they they actually decrease the suffering more than they may even know. And that's what I've been trying to do, and I'm not very good at it, but if someone I know is going through a terrible time, being there to listen, or maybe to help, maybe make them a meal or something along those lines, it's crazy how a little bit of love and a little bit of care can reduce that person's suffering so much, and you can just make that the world a better place. And I'm not sure why I'm wanting to talk about this today, but it's just on my brain. There's a one of my friends, I just heard that his cousin passed away kind of unexpectedly. He was pretty young, and it's just sad. And I also, a close family friend of mine, there's a younger couple that's having a kid, and there's some health complications with the kid, and they don't exactly know what the outcome will be. And it's hard to hear because you want good news in life and you want there to be good situations, but that's not always the case. So I just came here trying to just unpack some of these ideas, and I just looked up some quotes on suffering, and here's a few. Wisdom comes only through suffering. I don't know if I agree fully with that, but you do seem to get wiser when you suffer. You Something terrible happens, you definitely won't forget it, and you'll make sure to not have. You'll try your best to decrease the probability for something similar to happen in the future. And so you do become wiser when pain and suffering occurs, and you do have a different perspective on life. And I feel like you also become more grateful, because when you have a rough patch, but then things take a turn and finally things are going good, it makes you stop and think and say, I don't want to take this for granted, because these moments are short and these moments are rare and these moments should be cherished. So I feel like looking through the lens of I'm going to suffer, everyone will suffer, suffering is going to come, tragedy will come, malevolence is coming, malevolence is occurring right now, all of those things. When I think in life through those terms, I become so much more grateful, because then I realize, wow, I actually had a good day today, which is a rare thing. Things can go wrong all the time. And instead of coveting someone else's life or wishing you had a different situation, I've tried to realize and tried to step out of myself and say, hey, Harley, you actually have a lot to be grateful for today. You have a lot to be grateful for this week. You have a lot to be grateful for your life in general. And things aren't that bad, and things could be a lot worse. So don't take it for granted. And that idea, it's really helped me, because when I heard when I was younger that from different sources saying that, oh, life is so good and it's very fun, and then when something terrible happens, or life is all part of God's good plan, and then something terrible happens, and then you're like, oh, wow, it really makes you think, is this part of the really God's good plan? And then someone might say, yeah, it is. And you can't really see God's plan because you're a human and you're separated from his wisdom. And it's like, fair enough. But for me, pragmatically, when I look at it, I like to think terrible things will occur. Life is suffering. Tragedy will occur. But you have two different choices. You can resent the world because life is so suffering, or you can be incredibly grateful for the moments that are good, and you can stand up against the bad and against the suffering and help reduce the suffering in your life and the ones around you. So I guess this is just a call to action to think. When you see someone going through a rough situation, or you can tell they're not doing well, I guess my call to action for you would be to send them a call, send them a text, send them something in the mail, maybe send them a gift card for food, who knows, just something. And if you if you are going through a rough time, reach out to your loved ones. Reach out to me. I'm willing to listen, because there are people who will help you, and you can't suffer alone. That's the another thing that I want to talk about. I see some people who sometimes have a terrible situation in life, but then they don't want to tell anyone about it. They want to be strong, and they want to keep it to themselves, and they want to bear that burden alone, and they think they can solve their problems themselves, and here's the thing, no one really knows what they're going through, and the person that's struggling might not even fully know what they're going through, and they obviously aren't going to get that much help, because no one's going to know about their problems. And if you're the only brain that's thinking about this terrible situation, or maybe you and someone else are, it's just going to, the probability that this problem is going to have a solution quickly is low. And so that's why reaching out to the people you can trust, not everyone, you don't need to reach out to everyone, but pick like 5 or 6, maybe 4 people that you really want to get close with or are close with. Trust them with this information that you're suffering or that you're going through something terrible, because it reduces the suffering on your head, because then it's shared between you and a few other people. So it's like, instead of you holding all this weight up on your shoulders, oh, there's so much pain, and oh, my life is so terrible, oh, there's just terrible things happening. And it's like, oh, how about a close friend? Let's have him over. I need to rant for a minute. I need to vent. And then they listen, and then that burden is decreased. And so that's my call to action right there, which is, if you're going through a terrible time, reach out to the people you love, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable. That's what true relationships are about: vulnerability and trust. And you have to suffer together, and that's kind of how this life works. You're either going to suffer alone miserably, or you're going to suffer with the people you love way less miserably. And so that's just another thought on this whole suffering situation. And yeah, this might be a shorter episode, but I see a lot of suffering going on in the world, and I'm trying my best to think about how to make the suffering decrease. And part of me thinks recording these episodes so that people can hear and so that people can think about these things might be my best way to help. Maybe not the best way, but I'm going to try. And I just want to encourage you guys to be great listeners to those. Ask people questions, especially when you can see on their face that they really aren't fine. How are you doing? I'm fine. Don't let them say that. You know they aren't fine. You have no idea what kind of suffering they might be going through, and you have no idea how much you could help them and how much you guys could grow in relationship if you just asked and listened. And so I guess there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this type of topic, but let's try to summarize. Point 1, if you are suffering, don't become completely disparaged, because it's a fundamental reality. And also, look to the people you're close with, because they can help bear the burden with you. And 2, if you see someone else suffering, or a situation that's bad and that you could help, try your best to help. Try your best to listen. Try your best to provide solutions, or even just be there when they're hurting. And don't be afraid to ask for help if you're suffering, I guess. Thank you, guys. We aren't going to suffer alone, and we're going to use each other. Not even use each other. We're going to trust each other with our problems, so that our problems can seem less huge, and so that our problems can get more views from other people, so that they can be seen from different angles, so that they can be solved more effectively, more efficiently, and more quickly. And that's my big goal for this whole podcast right here, which is trust the people you love and are close with your problems, so that they can trust you with theirs, so that each individual doesn't suffer as much as they might have to if they are alone. So, thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed this somewhat short and discombobulated episode, but I really needed to talk about suffering and pain, because there's been some suffering and pain going around recently. And yeah, if you guys made it to the end of the video, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and energy that you used watching or listening to this. I really appreciate it. If you found this conversation meaningful, share it with your friends. Give me a like on YouTube. Subscribe. Follow me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Give me a rating. I really appreciate it. Word of mouth is how I'm going to spread this, and if you found it useful, tell all your loved ones, because I bet they'll find it useful too. Thank you so much for your time, and you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.